Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I found a tag on Dane Reed's channel called the End of the Decade book tag, and it was created by Brews and Reviews. I thought it was a really good tag, and so I just decided I would do my take on it. So the first thing you have to do with this tag is split the decade into 3 sections. The first one is 2010 to 2013, then it's 2014 to 2016, and then 2017 to 2019. And the first question is, how much did you read? So for the first section, 2010 to 2013, not as much as I would like. I was massively into writing at this point, which I still write, but I was like fully in the headspace for at this point. So I ended up writing way more than I read. However, I did read Lord of the Rings during this time. I read the abridged version of Count of Monte Cristo for the first time, and I also read a number of Shakespeare plays as well. In the second section, which is 2014 to 2016, I started off reading a lot. I was in college at the time, so it was pretty common for me to read multiple books in a week for school. There was one time I remember where, for whatever reason, I had accidentally misjudged how big an assignment was going to be, and I ended up reading the book and writing the report on it in one evening, starting at, I think it was 7 o'clock at night. That was a stressful day. I finished that section of college and moved on to my next phase of college, and because of how things were going, my reading dropped off hugely. I don't think I really did any reading apart from maybe little bits of reading here and there. I think I might have read some of the Percy Jackson books for the first time during that time, but it wasn't hugely present. And for the last section, which was 2017 to 2019, I started with almost no reading, and then it built over time. I was still in college when it started. I wasn't really doing a lot of reading as a result. But then I finished college, and kind of just due to the circumstances that I was in at the time, I suddenly had the ability to read more and to find out more about books and just to see what was out there. So I started reading more and more, and it's picked up a lot. It's kind of on a bit of a dip right now, but it's still a lot more than I was reading. I actually have systems that I use to motivate myself to read now, which I definitely did not have before. Question 2 is, what genre did you read the most? For 2010 to 2013, that would be mainly fantasy, because that was my massive Lord of the Rings fad, with a little bit of sci-fi mixed in, and then some classics as well, with books like Count of Monte Cristo was during this time, Pride and Prejudice, all that kind of stuff was in there. Then during the second section, which was 2014 to 2016, I read a lot of theology and lifestyle books. So The Case for Christ was one. I also read The Generosity Factor, Strunk and White, that's grammar, but that was another thing that I read during that time. Really good book, incidentally. It's about grammar, but it's actually really funny too. Also short. It's very, very short. And then during the third section, 2017 to 2019, there's been a lot of fantasy, a lot of middle grade, but also some branching out into new sections that I haven't really read much of yet. I kind of started rediscovering regular sci-fi fantasy, more of the well-being books. I also read more nonfiction this year than I have in a long time. So a bit more branching out, but a ton of middle grade. For instance, this year there was Tilly and the Bookwanderers, a couple of the Percy Jackson books that I either hadn't read or were rereading. The Graveyard book I've seen classified as both sci-fi fantasy, mainly fantasy, and middle grade, so depending on how you classify it, there's that. Number 3, who are your favorite books and authors? For 2010 to 2013, there was Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings, because, huge Lord of the Rings fan. There was also Alexander Dumas. I really have only read The Count of Monte Cristo by him. Well, I listened to the audiobook of Three Musketeers a long time ago. Don't remember a ton of it, but I have technically read that story as well. And also The Tempest by William Shakespeare was another big one. Shakespeare in general has always been a big one for me, but this is the time when I actually got to study it in school. I had read it before, but I had never really studied it with another person, so that was really, really cool. For the 2014 to 2016 section, I want to spotlight The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. This book is incredible. Lee Strobel was actually a reporter, and this book is basically him investigating the validity of Christianity, specifically surrounding Jesus Christ himself. It talks about the crucifixion, the resurrection, a lot of different aspects about it. It really delves into the science behind it, historically what would have been happening, and just kind of walks through it all. And pretty much every chapter is basically a novelized version of him actually having an interview with an expert in whatever area he's discussing in that chapter. It's really interesting and well written. And for 2017 to 2019, I'm going to go with some that I talk about a lot on here. We have The Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman, which is right here. Sorry, I just set this up. And then, of course, there's the Artemis Fowl books, which are all here by Colfer, and the Percy Jackson books by Riordan. I love all of these. I have done videos where I discuss them or at least briefly talk about them before, so I'll link those down below. But yeah, those are my big ones right now. Number 4, is there a book you wish you'd read during this time? So for the first time period, 2010 to 2013, I'm going to say the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Here's my dad's lovely copy of it. I don't really want to mess with the figurine right now, but yeah. I have read parts of the Silmarillion. Specifically, I love the first chapter. I've read that multiple times. But I have yet to actually get the motivation to read the entire thing. I want to read it because it's really interesting and it is the history of Middle-earth in one, novel, basically, or history book, novel, fictional history book. I don't know. For 2014 to 2016, I'm going to list 2. There is The Case for Grace by Strobel. This book is very similar to The Case for Christ, I believe, except that it focuses in on a different topic related to Christianity. And the second one I want to talk about is The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. This book, it basically talks to you about how to deal with difficult emotions. So I think it would have been better if I had read it younger as well. I'm reading it now, but if I'd read it even younger, it would have been really good too. And for the last couple of years, 2017 to 2019, I am going to say the Space Trilogy, also known as the Cosmic Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. This series sounds very interesting to me. I haven't heard very much, but what I have heard is very intriguing. Also, it's C.S. Lewis, and I actually want to read more of his stuff. And I actually own this series. I have all 3 books, but I have yet to read it. So that one is definitely on my TBR list. I'm not sure I'm going to get to it, but I want to read it relatively soon because it sounds really good. Number 5, do you have any regrets about your reading during this time? For 2010 to 2013, I'm going to say that I wish I had been more confident about speaking up about my opinions regarding certain stories, because I had a lot of opinions regarding different books, but just for whatever reason I didn't end up sharing them most of the time, and I think that could have been really helpful to actually be able to talk to people about it. For 2014 to 2016, I wish that I'd used reading as more of a form of expression and, I guess, emotional feeding, edifying, whatever you want to call it. Because most of what I was reading, even if it was really good, was because it had been assigned to me. And then when I wasn't reading, it was because it just seemed like too much work and I was exhausted. So I wish that I had put in a bit more effort to actually make myself read during that time for entertainment purposes. And for 2017 to 2019, I'm going to say that I wish I had started recording my thoughts sooner, because I have a lot of thoughts regarding the books I read, and a lot of those thoughts get forgotten after the initial reading. Some of them don't, but a lot of them do, so I wish that I had records of that. And now we're going to kind of step away from the different time segments of the decade, and the next question is, number 6, when did you find BookTube and did it change your reading habits? I found it about a year ago. I've kind of vaguely seen bits and pieces of it around before then, but I hadn't actually really started to pay attention to the community and actually watch videos and realize, oh, this is an actual network of people on YouTube until about a year ago. So that was really cool to discover. And yes, it has changed my reading habits. I found being on BookTube, I hear about a lot of books that I wouldn't have heard about otherwise, so that's a big factor to it. But also just kind of hearing different opinions from different people. And number 7, how has your reading changed over the last decade? A big thing is that I've become somewhat more, I guess, active in how I read. I tend to pay attention to things more and I'm really absorbing the details. And part of that is just that I'm recording things more now and keeping track of them a little bit better, but that does seem to be a bit more of a thing. As I get older, I'm starting to pay more attention. And the other thing is that I'm pickier about what I read. I'm starting to realize more that even if something looks like something I would enjoy, if I don't feel like reading it, that's okay. Maybe write down its title, and if you feel like it in a certain amount of time or whatever, then pick it up, but I don't have to force myself to read something just because I feel like I should. So anyway, thank you for watching, everybody. What do you think of all these questions? And also, what plans do you guys have for going into 2020 with your reading habits? It's exciting, we're into a new decade. So thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. See you later.